Thomas Sowell is one of the greatest thinkers of our time and one of my favourite people. If you don't know who he is a 93-year-old professor of economics from the United States who's been prolific as a writer in his life. He now has a new book out. There's no stopping this man. He grew up in Harlem in New York. He served in the US Marine Corps. He got an undergraduate degree from Harvard, a master's from Columbia University, and a doctorate from the University of Chicago. Since 1977, he's been a fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University in San Francisco. Being 93 years old, it is priceless whenever Dr. Sowell does a new interview. His new book is called Social Justice Fallacies, and he spoke to the Hoover Institute's Uncommon Knowledge podcast about it recently.
Social justice. Dr. Martin Luther King in 1963, quote, "I have a dream."
My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
And you write, Dr. King's message was equal opportunity for individuals, regardless of race. In the years that followed, the goal changed to equal outcomes for groups. What now rose to dominance was the social justice agenda. If the social justice, those backing the social justice agenda, could have everything they wanted, what would the country look like?
We'd be killing each other.
And he's not joking. Professor Sowell says equality of outcome is an insane objective for any political movement to try to enforce. His book demolishes many fallacies about social justice, one of them known as the chess piece fallacy.
Well, Adam Smith had a very low opinion of abstract theorists who imagine that they can control a whole society with the ease with which one puts chess pieces where you want them on a chessboard. And so there's this notion of this inert mass of people down there, and then the wonderfully brilliant people at the top who ought to be telling them what to do. And there's no thought that, first of all, those at the top don't even know the people's individual conditions, who are very different from themselves. And when they try to help, they can make things disastrous.
When they try to help, they can make things disastrous. A wise and timely piece of advice for us all. Another social justice fallacy is the idea that government can achieve results by arranging things. But Professor Sowell says governments don't arrange things, they compel things. And it's not a subtle difference.
Well, if you're going to try to get some kind of result, you have to specify through what kinds of mechanism you expect to get that result. And different mechanisms, whether it's the government, the market, the Red Cross, whatever, they have their own individual things that they're good at and not so good at. And so you can't get the social justice result that you want unless you have the kind of institution that's likely to produce that result. Politics is not that kind of institution.
And yet they all implicitly rely on government.
Yes.
Redistribution of wealth, adjusting, using legal regimes to adjust the proportions of various groups that get certain jobs. They all rely on government. And what's distinctive about government is it's the one institution that can send you to jail.
Yes.
All right. And the point is that's dangerous. We shouldn't want more government, more hands in the power of the politicians.
Yeah, one of the real problems is that you have people making decisions for which they pay no price when they're wrong, no matter how high a price other people pay.
Dan Andrews and Mark McGowan around? Anyone? Oh, they've quit. Oh, okay. One of the most important fallacies covered by Professor Sowell in this book, and one of the most relevant for Australians today, is what he calls the racial fallacy. And nothing seems to upset Professor Sowell more than the modern so-called progressive idea that race and racism are the causes of poverty and disadvantage in our societies.
When you take on this modern progressive position that racism accounts for anything, there are passages in which you're angry. I felt that there are passages in which there's emotion that is very close to this. So let me just read a little bit.
Okay.
Median black family income has been lower than median white family income for generations. But the median per capita income of Asian groups is more than $15,000 a year higher than the median per capita income of white Americans. Is this the white supremacy we're so often warned about?
I think that the people don't look for certain evidence, and therefore they don't find it. And so on the basis of what they know at a given time, this may be very plausible. The problem is that what you really need are other people with different orientation who are skeptical and who will then look for things and find things that are very different from that.
And this is the problem with Albo's proposed disinformation and misinformation laws. If we shut down everyone who has a different view, a contrarian view, a rebel view, an outsider view, all the crazy right-wing nutjobs and left-wing nutjobs and libertarian anarchists and communists and socialists and conservatives and the religious right and whoever you want to label and shut down, if we stop the extreme and different views from at least being able to be expressed and for those ideas to be discussed and shed under the light of day so we can see if they're any good or not, we will shut down a lot of disinformation and misinformation and wrong information. But we'll shut down a lot of right and important information with it. Like the fact that racism or race actually seems to have nothing to do with social disadvantage and poverty. So it would be a very, very bad thing to put race into your constitution thinking that you were helping anyone get out of real poverty or problems. Even if every academic in every social science department in your country believed that to be true.
Fact that there are various counties in the United States which are among the poorest counties in the country, and 6 of those counties have a population that ranges from 90% white to 100% white.
Appalachian counties.
Yes.
Kentucky and Ohio, as I recall.
Yeah, but mainly it's the hillbilly communities.
Right.
These are people who have faced zero racism.
They are white.
And they are white and zero racism. And also they're back in the 30s when they did IQ studies, their IQs were not only at the same level as those of blacks, they had the same pattern, namely that the young people, whether they were black or hillbilly, would have an IQ very close to the national average at age 6. But by the time they were teenagers, it just kept going down and down and down because it's relative to the other people of that age group, and they simply were falling behind. So it was clearly not biological; it was social. But despite that, these hillbilly counties had incomes that were not only lower than the national average, they were lower than the average of black incomes for a period of half a century. It may have been longer than that because I only went through half a century. But in every study that was done over that half century, they scored lower. Their family incomes were lower than the family incomes of blacks. So obviously there must be other things that cause people to be poor other than racism.
Wow. Wouldn't it be terrible if a country got that wrong? You know, I don't have a lot of respect for academics in Australia. There are some great exceptions, of course, but I'm afraid academia in Australia, particularly in the social sciences, but also in economics, unfortunately, has become a groupthink monoculture of people following each other's tails, trying not to upset anyone so they can keep their jobs. The infiltration of one dominant leftist ideology into our universities is more than just a bad thing. It's a national danger of huge proportions, because these are the people educating our teachers, who then educate all of our kids. I'm not sure how we fix that. Maybe we need to look at private universities and change the funding model, since public universities seem to have failed us enormously. Professor Thomas Sowell is 93 years old. What a brain.